What happens inside a woman's mind when she realizes you've stopped caring? It's not just confusion, it's confrontation with her own ego, her past decisions, and the version of you she thought she had wrapped around her finger. When a man detaches, a woman doesn't just notice it, she feels it in her soul. And Carl Jung would say, that's where the shadow begins to speak. 1. The moment she feels the shift, the ego crack begins. The moment you pull back emotionally, without words, without drama, is the moment she begins to feel something that rattles her to the core. It's not loud, it's not obvious, but it hits hard. This is the shift that Carl Jung would describe as the ego confronting its shadow. When a woman senses that your interest, which she once counted on like gravity, is no longer guaranteed. Until now, she's existed in a reality where she held the upper hand, emotionally, mentally, even spiritually. She believed she could predict your every move, that your feelings were fixed, and that your devotion was permanent. But now, something's changed. Your attention isn't flowing like it used to. The emotional warmth she fed off is no longer there. This moment creates a fracture, a subtle crack in the ego. It's not just about losing attention, it's about losing control, and control is comfort. You see, women don't just crave love, they crave certainty. Certainty that they matter, certainty that they can affect you. When you go silent, when your vibe shifts from chasing to detached, she doesn't just feel ignored, she feels destabilized. She starts wondering, did I do something wrong? Why does he seem so different? These questions create psychological discomfort, but Jung tells us that discomfort is the entry point to transformation. When the ego gets cracked open, the unconscious, the repressed, the denied, the ignored, starts flooding in. And it's in this precise moment that the dynamic begins to change. Because once she feels the shift, you've gained something rare, leverage. But not the kind you use to manipulate. This is internal power, quiet strength. And ironically, it's your absence that's speaking the loudest now. You've become the question that she can't stop thinking about. Don't rush to explain yourself. Don't give her clarity too soon. Why? Because it's in that confusion that her emotional walls begin to collapse. The silence you maintain will echo louder than any words. Her mind will fill in the blanks, and often, her imagination will make you even more powerful than you were before. This is where she starts to reevaluate you, not as the predictable man she took for granted, but as a mystery, a riddle, a man with depth who no longer revolves around her world. The truth is, you didn't change. You just stopped pouring energy into someone who stopped valuing it. And now, she's finally noticing. 2. She tests the waters, subtle attempts to pull you back. After that initial internal shakeup, after she starts sensing you're pulling away, something fascinating happens. She doesn't confront you directly. She doesn't say, "Why don't you like me anymore?" No, she becomes strategic, subtle, intentional. This is the stage where she begins to test the waters. Carl Jung once wrote that the unconscious mind is always seeking balance. When something is lost, especially emotionally, the psyche instinctively seeks to restore equilibrium. That's exactly what happens here. She senses a void where your attention used to be, and instinctively, she wants to fill it. Her first move might be small. A text out of nowhere. A heart emoji on an old Instagram story. A sudden comment under your post that says, "Ha ha ha, this is so you." On the surface, it looks innocent. But it's a calculated probe. A way of saying, "Are you still there?" This is not love. It's validation seeking. It's her way of confirming that she still has access to your emotional energy. Because if you respond quickly, if you come back eagerly, it restores the old dynamic, where she had the emotional upper hand. But here's the trap. Most men misread this. They interpret these small reach-outs as signs that she's coming back, that she misses them, that the chase has ended. And so they rush in, texting more, validating her again, trying to reignite the connection. What they don't realize is, she's not reaching out because she suddenly realized your worth. She's reaching out to confirm whether she's lost it. There's a difference, and this is where your discipline matters most. Because the more you hold your frame, the more she starts to feel the gap between who you were and who you're becoming. That contrast? It builds tension, and tension, when unbroken, creates attraction. Now, don't mistake this phase for indifference on her part. She's watching closely. She's reading your responses. She's gauging your energy. Are you cool, calm, slightly detached, or are you trying to win her back? The more emotionally unfazed you appear, the more intrigued she becomes. It's psychological gravity. The less available you are, the more valuable you become. And suddenly, she realizes she's no longer sure how to reach you. And that realization, it stings. Because it's in that moment that she begins to understand. You're not who you used to be. And that scares her more than she'll ever admit. 3. The shadow phase. She confronts what she ignored. When her attempts to reclaim your attention fall flat, something deeper begins to stir. Her mind, once distracted by her own certainty and control, is now gripped by a more powerful force: reflection. This is where Carl Jung's concept of the shadow becomes relevant. The shadow, in Jungian psychology, represents the unconscious aspects of ourselves, the truths we refuse to acknowledge, the feelings we suppress, the mistakes we never admit. And in your absence, her shadow rises. She doesn't just miss you. She starts confronting herself. She replays every conversation in her head. She reanalyzes moments she once dismissed. That time you stayed quiet when she disrespected you. That moment when you gave her space, even though she was being cold. That silent strength you showed, that she never gave credit to, now comes back as echoes in her mind. Echoes that grow louder with every passing day. Why? Because your withdrawal forces her to reevaluate not just you, but herself in relation to you. Her ego told her she had you figured out. But your absence rewrites that story. Now she has to consider that she may have taken you for granted, that she underestimated your worth, that she mistook your patience for weakness. And here's the key. She doesn't want to admit that. So instead, she projects. She might blame you in her mind. Maybe he was never that into me anyway. She may convince herself that you were playing a game or acting immature. But deep down, she knows. This shift wasn't about manipulation. It was about you reclaiming your peace. This internal tension builds. She feels regret, confusion, guilt. And yet, she doesn't know how to express any of it without losing more power. That's what makes this phase so intense for her. Because now it's not just about you. It's about the version of herself she's being forced to confront. The version that didn't appreciate what she had. The version that mistook attention for approval. The version that let ego lead instead of vulnerability. And the longer you stay quiet, the deeper she sinks into that shadow space. This is why your silence is so powerful. Because it doesn't just create absence, it creates a mirror. And in that mirror, she sees the truth. Not just about you, but about herself. 4. Emotional projection. From indifference to overcompensation. At this point, her silence becomes unbearable. She's tried to ignore the change. She's tested the waters. She's even rationalized your absence. But nothing worked. So now, she shifts into overdrive. She starts acting as if she's totally unbothered. You see her posting more, laughing more, going out, maybe even mentioning a new guy, subtly, but just loud enough for you to notice. But this isn't confidence. This is overcompensation. Carl Jung said, "The greater the suppression, the more powerful the eruption." What she's doing now isn't just for her, It's for you. She's hoping you'll see her and regret pulling away. She's hoping to trigger something in you, anger, jealousy, attention, anything. Because to her, even a negative reaction means you still care. This is emotional projection at its finest. She doesn't feel in control, so she creates a version of herself that looks in control, but it's fragile. Underneath that confident exterior is someone who's emotionally destabilized. This is the phase where most men crack. They see the new pictures, the flirty comments, the "I'm living my best life" energy, and they panic. They think she's moving on, and they jump back in, texting her, chasing her, trying to win her attention again. But what they don't realize is, this is the final test. She doesn't want you to react. She wants to know that even now, even when she's pushing buttons, you remain unshaken. Because that's what separates the man she once controlled from the man she respects. If you remain calm, centered, grounded, that illusion she's projecting begins to crack. And once again, she's left with the one thing that terrifies her more than anything else: your emotional indifference. Because if you're not reacting now, she knows she's lost something real. And no post, no party, no new guy can replace that kind of presence. 5. The silent realization. He's not who I thought he was. This is the tipping point, the phase where silence becomes not just noticeable, but defining. She's done testing. She's exhausted the mind games. She's projected, distracted, and performed, but nothing brought you back. Nothing pulled the old version of you out from hiding. And now, something terrifying starts to unfold in her mind. You're no longer the man she thought you were. See, people like to believe they understand those closest to them. It gives them a sense of safety, power, and certainty. But your withdrawal has exposed a truth she wasn't ready for. She never really understood you at all. This realization shakes the very foundation of how she framed your connection. Because if you weren't predictable, if your emotions weren't entirely accessible, if your presence wasn't a given, then you were never truly hers in the way she believed. In Jungian psychology, this is when the persona, the mask we wear in relationships, falls off. She can no longer project her assumptions onto you. She's now forced to observe you as you are, composed, distant, and evolving. And in your stillness, she starts to feel small. Not because you made her feel that way, but because your growth has illuminated her emotional stagnancy. You're no longer orbiting her world, and that absence becomes louder than any words you could have spoken. She might try one last subtle reach out, but the energy is different now. It's cautious, curious, laced with the unspoken question, are you really gone? And if you stay consistent, if you respond without chasing, engage without pursuing, you solidify your position as someone she now has to earn. This is when respect enters the equation, and respect is the foundation of real desire. 6. The urge to reconnect, but now on your terms. Once a woman has sat in the void long enough, a powerful urge begins to rise within her, the urge to reconnect. Not just out of curiosity anymore, but from something deeper. The realization that she may have lost someone irreplaceable. But here's the difference now. You're not available like you once were. This phase is critical because it defines your new identity in her mind. If you've done the inner work, if you've grown in silence, if you've healed your need for external validation, then when she finally reaches out, you're not the same man. She may send a text that sounds casual, like, "Hey, I saw something that reminded me of you," or "I've been thinking about you lately." But make no mistake, these are not casual messages. These are emotional probes, a way to find out where you stand. Do you still crave her validation, or have you evolved past it? And here's your advantage. You don't need to play games. You don't need to ignore her or manipulate the situation. All you need to do is show, through calm detachment, that you are no longer emotionally dependent on her. Engage if you want to, but do so from a place of grounded strength. Be warm, but not chasing. Be open, but not needy. Be kind, but not eager. This creates a psychological paradox for her, because the more she realizes she can't shake your inner peace, the more drawn she becomes. In Jungian terms, you've become integrated, whole, centered. And that kind of man? That's a rarity she now wants back, but on your terms. 7. When curiosity turns into obsession. At this stage, the silence has fermented, and in that stillness, her curiosity, which began as mild concern, now becomes all-consuming. She's not just wondering if you've moved on. She's wondering who you've become without her. She checks your stories, watches for any hint of change. She asks mutual friends about you, stalks your social feeds, replays old conversations in her head trying to decode the shift. She'll search for meaning in your silence, and every unanswered question becomes a psychological itch she can't scratch. This is where obsession quietly creeps in. Jung said that what we suppress becomes the very thing that controls us, and your absence, once viewed as a tactic or phase, now becomes an emotional anchor in her daily thoughts. She doesn't understand how you could detach so effortlessly, and that inability to grasp it only fuels the mystery. Remember, what the human mind can't control, it fixates on, and what it fixates on, it amplifies. You've now become a narrative inside her mind, a storyline that she replays every time she lies awake wondering, did I push him too far? Or, what if I ruined something real? The emotional tension builds to a point where she might act impulsively, sending a heartfelt message, appearing in person, or even confessing feelings she never shared before. But don't mistake obsession for love. It's not always about you. It's about her unresolved feelings about herself in your presence. She's not just drawn to you, she's drawn to the man she couldn't figure out. And that, in the psychological game of relationships, is power. 8. The final stage, her silent regret. And finally, the weight of it all catches up to her. The missed chances, the ignored red flags, the moments when she could have shown up for you, but didn't. The way she undervalued your presence until it was gone. This is regret. Not the performative kind, but the real, soul-deep kind that sits in the chest like a stone. Carl Jung believed that regret is not a punishment, but a catalyst, a gateway into deeper awareness. That's what's happening to her now. She's no longer trying to reach out, to test, or to perform. The energy has shifted from action to reflection. She's quieter, more distant. And behind that silence lies a storm of thoughts she'll never say out loud. He really was different. He really did care. And I let that go. By now, she knows she can't rewind. She can't return to the version of you she once knew, because that man doesn't exist anymore. You've evolved, transcended, matured, and she's left alone with the consequences. That's the beauty of emotional growth. It's not about revenge or proving a point. It's about becoming the kind of man whose absence speaks louder than his presence ever did. And in her silence, she mourns the man who walked away. Not because he stopped caring, but because he finally started caring for himself. And now you know. When a woman realizes you're no longer interested, it doesn't just make her curious. It forces her into a silent emotional war within herself. She'll try to mask it, distract from it, even deny it. But deep down, she knows something powerful has shifted, and that shift is you. You're no longer the man waiting. You're the man evolving. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." Let this be your moment of awakening. You didn't lose her. You found you. If this video resonated, hit that like button, subscribe for more psychology-backed truths, and share it with someone who's walking away from what no longer serves them. Until next time, stay grounded, stay powerful, and never chase what doesn't see your value.